Hello all. Welcome back. So, if you don't know who I am Eva. I am the owner of Independent Two Spirit Media. Just doing basically today, I wanted to talk about everything that has gone on or is going on since Trump has become president. You know, I actually had hope that there would actually be, a certain possibility that he might try and make America great again. Or at least make America great. The reason why I say that is because back, a while back, we had a short stint of time for about 5 years where everything was just great. Everything was looking forward. We were starting to move forward inside of our government, inside of our cities. And that was literally the last 5 years, from 2012 to 2017. We all started to look up and look forward, Everyone started opening up more businesses. They become more applicable to open up businesses because they had more money due to Obamacare saving money for people that were poor, leaving them with a little bit of extra money to not only take care of themselves, but also to save, give them the opportunity to save and open up businesses. Now, without things like, affordable insurance, or if you don't have insurance, free insurance, is the fact that you don't have to pay for medications if you absolutely need them. Such as if you need to go to the emergency room, you don't have to pay $1 million. You know what I mean? When it comes down to it, really, everybody could qualify for Obamacare. And if you couldn't qualify for it, you would have to pay a certain amount. And if you made a lot of money, you paid a lot of money in to pay for the people that were poor. And that's how it worked. Now, I don't understand, and I don't get it, but, I've looked it up and I've researched everything, and everybody's saying Obamacare is so horrible. Well, it's not really. If you think about it, the kids that are refusing to get Obamacare and pay are the same kids that are refusing to save money, that literally spend their money on beer, alcohol, and things like that. Kids that are in their 20s that are responsible, that have jobs and go to college and things like that, either have Obamacare or pay for Obamacare. $35 a month, $45 a month, $100 a month, whatever they can afford. Now, I don't understand, and I still yet don't get how people think or seem to think that Obamacare is ruining our country. It hasn't in any way. It's actually helped our country. The people that were poor actually became able to have insurance without having to pay a dime. And were able to get the health care that they needed. And were able to get jobs. And were able to sustain a life. And they started to get, more people, less and less people started to get homeless over the years that Obamacare has been in effect. And that's because they were able to save. They were able to get jobs and save instead of able to get jobs and spend $135 a month on insurance like they were in the 90s and the early thousands. It was getting ridiculous. There for a little bit, I was demanded that I would need to pay $190 a month every single month just for my medication, or pay $210 a month for insurance. And that's what Trump wants to go back to. We need to look at that and go back to the reality of it. He wants to literally give insurance companies full rein like they used to have, to charge people whatever they wanted, no matter what it was. And this is not to help the poor. They would refuse to give insurance to the poor before Obamacare. After Obamacare, they had to. They had no choice. They had to give insurance to the poor. So instead of becoming filthy rich every year, they lost out. Insurance companies started losing out $2, $3, $4 billion a year because they were spending their money where it was supposed to go. That's the point of insurance. That was the point of our country in the first place when we started insurance. We need to remember that. If you don't believe me, go back to the start of insurance companies. Literally, the start of insurance companies happened because the rich needed to help the poor to keep from getting sick and dying. That's seriously how insurance companies worked. And that's the way Obamacare works. Exactly the way insurance companies are supposed to work. But instead, Insurance companies became a conglomerative corporation in the early thousands and started to own everything. They started to open up bigger businesses with bigger insurance and bigger money. And poor people were getting more poor and dying at incredible rates. You really want to go back to that? I guess Trump didn't care enough to look at that when he decided that, insurance companies are just losing money. That's all he cares about. That's it. That's all he cares about, is that insurance companies and corporations are losing money. Corporations are losing money because they spent billions and billions upon billions of dollars on each other for millions of years. Or not millions of years, I'm sorry. For years. Tens, 20s, 10, 20 years, 30 years in some companies. Corporations spend money on corporations. They don't help the people. They're not in it for the people. 68% of rich people. This is a Google search poll, okay? You Google search this poll, it shows up. 68% of rich people could care less about the American people or the people that are underneath them, such as the middle class or the poor, the dirt poor. 68% of them could care less. That's ridiculous. That's disgusting. That is disgusting. 68% of people could care less about anybody else but corporations and themselves. Gross. Now, to go along with more, we've got climate change. He has vowed since the beginning to take money from climate change. Now, the reason why is because, and EPA, let's just put it all together. Let's just put climate change and EPA all together. Now, the climate change, basically, he wants the money from climate change to go into environmental infrastructure. Environmental infrastructure meaning the places that matter most to him. When he says environmental infrastructure, he means Trump's wall. He means the military public. He means taking money and putting it back towards the banks and fracking and oils and things like that here in America. Basically taking the money and putting it back into the corporations and the American corporations, instead of taking the money and putting it back into the climate and the earth and the peace of Mother that basically unites us all. And the EPA, as far as the EPA is concerned, he wants to take the EPA and pull more funding from them, or as much funding as he possibly can from the EPA, to spend money on more border patrol and more military funding. So, and the reason why he wants to do this is because he wants to open up 1,600 jobs. In the meantime, while he does these things, we need to look at the fact that when he takes away all of this money from EPA and climate and the climate change infrastructure, he's literally going to lose 6,500 jobs from the EPA and over 10,000 jobs from climate change disaster. That's over 13,000 jobs. Almost 14,000 jobs lost to create 1,600 and put money back into corporations, losing money in the meantime, which will no longer exist and go nowhere except for to the rich people. So we're seeing a circulation here. Everything that he's doing is to make the rich people rich and the poor people more poor. If you can't do the math and you can't add it up, you need to look it up and you need to start researching this stuff. Because education is purpose, and that's what we need. When we had more people educating themselves about what was going on in their American industries and their American government and the corporations, we had more people that were aware of environmental disasters, climate change, and things like that. Now, when we stopped caring about those things, that's when the rich started getting richer, and that's when Donald Trump became president, and that's when everything started to go to crap, or is going to crap as we speak. Donald Trump's bills still haven't made it through, but that's not to say that they're not going to. Even though his bills haven't made it through, we need to look at the fact that it did push back the environmental order that, you know, Obama pressed for the Environmental Protection Agency to push onto the Army Corps of Engineers so they wouldn't steal and take waters from indigenous people and 38 million people and their drinking water. That's right, the Missouri drinks, or 38 million people drink out of the Missouri River. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people who are going to lose out on drinking water if that pipeline breaks, or when it breaks. It's not if, it's when. Because all pipelines break. If you don't believe me, do a Google search on that too. And I've posted this millions of times over again. It's really sad and horrible. To go on with this, we have, and yes, I have notes. I actually took notes. I don't usually take notes, but you know, it's getting to more and more of where I need to be stating exactly what's going on, because people are coming up and they're commenting and saying that that's not true, that's fake news. This is not fake news. This is actually exactly what the government website said. I looked up all of these things, and I looked up his whole entire $1.1 trillion funding bill that he has. I mean, that's a lot of money. $1.1 trillion. That's a lot of money. You know, and these are the places he's taking it from. This is the bill that he's proposing, is to take away money from all of these places. That's where the $1.1 trillion is coming from. This bill states this, all of these things. It has a list, a huge list of things that it's going to take away from people. And it's not just people, it's all the people. So to go on with this, we have the Department of Health and Human Services will also be getting a $403 million take, or lowering of cost. Basically, they will be getting $403 million pulled from the Department of Health and Human Services Fund, which funds every single year. Every year. This is yearly. This funds this many doctors and nurses. Yearly, the DHHS funds 7,500 doctors and 12,000 nurses with medical training. Pays for funding for $7,500 doctors and 12,000 nurses. Gives medical training, funding for medical training for 7,500 doctors and 12,000 nurses. That's a lot. I mean, think about it. How many nurses are in this world, and how many nurses do we need? And that's not just worldwide. That's just here in America. And that's yearly. Yearly. And it doesn't only take away from that, but we also need to look at the fact that this funding takes away from everything Department of Health and Human Services does, which means all of the therapy, like therapeutic services for the mentally ill, for the homeless, for the people that are, you know, low of income. Department of Health and Human Services helps them to, and funds them to get free therapy. And drug addicts coming off of the streets that were homeless, that were in huge drug crises, that are coming out of rehab programs, that need help and assistance. DHHS is there to keep them clean for 90 more days. At least 90 more days, if not to get them into a drug rehab program and help them to sustain a life where they can restart a life, get a job, and become an American citizen, a productive member of society. And this is the funding that he's taking away. Okay, let's keep looking at the funding he's going to take away. So, Department of Urban Development, Department of Housing and Urban Development, $3.9 billion of a cut from Department of Housing and Urban Development, which funds the housing programs, all housing programs, basically the Section 8 housing programs that we have, and the homeless housing programs we have, basically for the poor, that houses the poor to keep them off the streets from, and the homeless families, to keep the homeless families off the streets, to fund them with an apartment so that they can have an address to get a job. We need to remember that without an address, you can't get a job. And you can't just have a P.O. box to get a job. You literally have to have a home address and a phone number to get a job. If you do not have those two things, a phone number and a registered address, residential address, you cannot get a job in American society. It's just not possible. So that's some of the funding that comes off of that. And also, Department of Housing and Urban Development also funds Meals on Wheels and more homeless efforts. Now these funds, what he is proposing, that he takes them from the homeless, he takes them from housing development centers, he takes all of these funds from homeless development centers, from health development centers, from healthcare, and he funds, guess what, guys? Big oil and big fracking, so that they can have more money in the American government in the future. That's right. He wants to take that money. That's $3.9 billion and $403 million. That is that's $4.3 billion of funding. He wants to take $4.3 billion of funding and put it toward big oil and fracking, so that we become more dependent on oil and oil money, to open up a temporary 6,500 jobs for every pipeline that's built, because 6,500 men lose their jobs for every man camp that's left behind. And that's just one man camp. Imagine all the man camps that are left behind in American society, which are soon becoming FEMA camps, let's be real. That's disgusting. Because when these pipelines are built, those men have no jobs anymore. Which means that they're homeless. Left without jobs, without homes, without money, without anything. And if they get out of the pipeline programs and the fracking programs right now, before they lose their job, before they get fired because the pipeline is finished, they're not going to have opportunity to get more work somewhere else, because that job's going to be covered up. Because we're going to have less and less jobs because of all this defunding he's doing in our American system. I mean, so far, I'm 5 into everything, 5 defunds. 5 things that he's defunding. 5 out of 19 things that he's defunding on this $1.1 trillion defect. 5. And we've already lost 75, 1,600, 12,000, 19, 21, 33,000 jobs. We've already lost 33,000 jobs, and I'm only $6.6 billion into his $1.1 trillion defund plan. That's a lot of jobs. But yet, gerbs. We need more gerbs. We need to make more gerbs, right? Okay, so, he's staging all of this and saying that this will create more jobs, when the fact is, it's not. It's going to create a few jobs and leave thousands without. Okay? Say hello to Kitty. This is Kitty. Hey, Kitty. Kitty, 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 kitty. She wanted to come say hi and get petted, obviously. Anyways, so, also, he wants to take more money from refugee funds. So, funding for refugees and refugee camps. He wants to take $1.3 billion from refugee funds. Kitty's more interesting to me. She's a lot cuter, I think. Anyway, so we have the refugee funds. They're gonna pull $1.3 billion from refugee funding, which means the FEMA camps, and not just the FEMA camps here in America, but we're talking about the FEMA camps in Ireland, the FEMA camps in Israel, the FEMA camps, everywhere, all across the world, everywhere that we fund, every country that we fund. Every time that they have a refugee or some kind of FEMA camp or anything like that, we fund that. And he wants to take that funding completely away. $1.3 billion. Basically, he wants to cut all refugee funding. All funding for all refugees. People coming in. I'm seeing... I just realized this just now. So, he put the Muslim ban down, right? So when he put down the Muslim ban, this is just an observation. This isn't something that I truly believe. But this could be a possibility, and this is just an observation. But he puts the Muslim ban down, right? And we all know it's a Muslim ban because, well, it bans Muslims from coming into this country. Period. End of statement. It's a Muslim ban. That's it. Plain and simple. It's a Muslim ban. So he put down the Muslim ban, and then he made it hard for any kind of person to get any kind of green card from any country at all. Doesn't matter where they're from. He made it almost impossible to get a green card. So after he did those two things, he now wants to cut funding from refugee programs, FEMA camps, environmental disasters, and put it all back into killing our own country, basically killing America through fracking, through big oil, through all of these things. So basically, he wants to take America and make it so that we can no longer have a sustainable program for any kind of refugee or any kind of person trying to come over here from another country, making it impossible for them to get health care, jobs, housing, funding, any of that. Making it impossible for them to get any of those things because he's taking funding away from everything, right? So the first people that they're going to be like, is the American people that have had these fundings for a very long time are going to keep these fundings, but new people that need these fundings that are coming into the American society are not going to get them. That's what this means. And that's just an observation. Now, we've already talked about how he signed the bill making oil contamination, fracking, and oil, not oil, and coal, making it legal basically for fracking, oil, and coal to pollute our waters legally. Basically, let's take the oil and, unless if it's 403 gallons or more, we're not going to worry about it. It's not even a leak. We don't even have to report it. And if it's a fracking disaster, we don't have to talk about it at all. We don't have to report it. No fire ever happened. No explosions ever happened. Nobody's farmlands were ever destroyed. No waters catch on fire. That doesn't happen. That's non-existent. And that's the way it's being made out. So we've already talked about all of that stuff. Now we're talking about we've got another bill where he wants to pull basically all trans rights away from schools and make it state regulation that the state picks and chooses whether a transgender student should have equal rights in schools and in the state. Basically making it viable for... Oh, and not only to mention that he also wants to make it legal for people to beat people and possibly kill them, hurt them in any kind of way, and claim that their religion is a beneficiary to what they do. And he put these bills together, which makes, the average normal person who likes to put two and two together think, okay, so he wants to make it legal for states to not prosecute people for beating and killing transgender students and people. Because they're Christians or whatever other religion. And that's the reality that I see. When you put two bills together like that, that's what I see. Kind of like when you put, the oil, the pipeline bill through. The same exact day he put through the coal pipeline, or the coal, the coal pollution bill. He put those two bills together like very close to... No, it was within a week. I'm sorry. It wasn't the same day. It was within a week of each other. And, it just makes it known that basically once these pipelines spill, which they will, if it's under 403 gallons of oil, they don't have to report it. And it just contaminates the drinking water and kills people. It's okay. Gives people cancer. That's alright. That's fine. Fracking accidents, we don't have to report them. Fire coming up out of water because of the pressure in the systems, we don't have to report that either. So these are the things that we're looking at. This is the reality we need to see. Trump's victory has not been a victory. It has been a very hard, trying, deceitful time. And he's done nothing but completely and utterly say, fuck the American way. And I hate to put it like that, but that's exactly what he's done. He's basically saying, screw you, America. We're going to make corporations and big oil and big fracking and big money bigger. And the rest of you can screw off and die. Whether you have medical care or not. Because you're not going to be able to afford it. Because I'm giving free rein to insurance companies. Or want to. That doesn't help. It doesn't make anything different. Obamacare has not been a disaster. It's been a disaster for the rich. And that's it. Plain and simple. So, keep educated. Watch Independent Two-Spirit Media on Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe, like, watch my other videos. I have another 116 other videos. Go through them all. I have 116 of them. There's a lot of them there. So please take your time, go through my videos, watch them all. I have rallies on there. I have a interview with Chase Iron Eyes. I have an interview with Roxanne White, with Jesse Nightwalker. I'm soon going to be getting other interviews done and completed. So, yeah, stay tuned and subscribe. Love you guys. Bye.